Art of Research is the title of our panel, and we invited colleagues, but also artists and curators from abroad to bring here. And just introducing very shortly our guests, and then there will be a series of presentations, and on the end we will gather all together to discuss the art of research and the subjects around what can art, film, media, performance, design be tools for research, and because this is the practice of all these people. So we invited Rike Frank, the managing director of the Berlin Artistic Research Program, and together with Vanessa and John Mueller, she's the artistic director of the European Kunsthalle, an institution without its own location, a curatorial work focused on temporality, textuality, and exhibition history. Where is Rike? Here. We also invited our colleague Paul Bailey. It's nice that everyone is spread around. I'm just giving a sentence. He's an Irish graphic designer, researcher, and educator based in London, and also professor here, exploring a practice that is made public through exhibitions, publications, performance, workshops, writings, teaching, and curation. We have also our colleague and Diana McCarty is a professor at the time-based media and performance together with myself. She's a feminist artist and media activist. Her work revolves around art, gender, politics, radical feminism, technology, and media. She's a co-founder of the Reboot FM, the award-winning free artist radio in Berlin, and of the Faces, online community platform for women. And myself, I'm not going to present myself, but I'm just also a professor here. My practice goes from filmmaking, archival practice, and performance, and community organizing. I'm also here as an educator. So I will, to finish, I'd like to invite Joy, Mariama Smith. They work primarily address the conundrum of projected identities in various contexts, rooted in socially engaged art practice. They are a performance, installation, moving artist, activist, facilitator, curator, researcher, dramaturg, and an architectural designer. Joy, be welcome.
Hello. Okay. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Are you alive? Yeah. Okay. The performance that I'm offering is actually participatory, so I'm going to invite you to stand up before you get too comfortable, because we're going to move around. Don't worry, if that already gives you anxiety, it's not aerobics or anything. Under the subject around practicing research or even how we research, I wanted to do participatory performance offering around how we understand intersectionality and our intersections, but to actually practice what this looks like in the form of a performance score. And of course, if you don't want to do it, you can just step to the side and see how the space shifts based on what's happening. It's very beautiful to watch sort of the movement of people around, so that is possible. And I also want to express gratitude for being hosted and invited, and for all the people that I don't know that made this moment possible, because I'm based in Amsterdam, so I really don't know everyone to name, so I'm just naming everyone. I appreciate that. How are you doing? Temperature check? Good, fine? Okay, woo, okay, enthusiasm. I'm also going to be speaking in English, but that doesn't mean you have to speak in English if you choose to speak. Does that make sense? And I can't find my phone, so I don't know what time it is, so please give me a signal when it's almost time. So, for a lot of people, I think it's good. So basically, I'm going to describe what is possible, and then we're going to practice. So it's the first thing is maybe turn up your ears, so you can consider this a listening performance primarily, and to not focus so much on the eyes or something like this, or to recalibrate your senses to listening at the top of the hierarchy of the senses, and then know that there's no wrong way to do what we're doing. This group of people hasn't ever been together like this, and we've never done it before, so it's an experiment. Yeah, and you can raise your hand or flag if you have a question also. So far, so good? Okay, great. So sometimes I call this an affinity exercise. Sometimes I call this performing intersectionality. So maybe that gives you a clue on what's possible. But basically, I will start, and then if someone is extremely extroverted, like the energy over here, anyone can speak. But first, I will speak. And basically, I will say something about myself, about my identity, and if you find yourself also in the statement I said, you will move towards me. And then I might move around and say something else, or someone might feel compelled to say something about their own, very simple, like, I'm an only child, for example, and then all the people that are only child move over. It's also possible to think around what other sorts of affinities you might have that might not be visible. So we're practicing. So you don't have to say what is in your bank account, for example, but you can say something that's not obvious or known to your colleagues or peers, and we just see. And anyone can call out. I will be walking around with a microphone, so you can signal, I want to say something. I think we will figure it out. Okay? All right. So I'm going to move now, and I will say, I was born in a country that I don't currently live in. English is my first language. German is my first language. I'm moving because I'm guiding people, not because German is obviously not my first language. I am an artist.
They are telling us.
I am over 40. I'm like, really? disability. I experience racism. Today I had a cup of tea. I am a teacher. I am a student. Now I'm going to open it up. Would anyone like to offer a statement about themselves? Anyone?
I'm a student because I'm very happy to do an advanced education in curatorial studies. I'm happy to do an advanced education in curatorial studies, and therefore I'm a student.
I like to dance.
Yeah, I love to dance and to sing together.
Sag das mal, dass er es kann.
Please.
I dance in the kitchen every day, in the room here, on the way to work, every time.
I sometimes drink a beer in the shower. Where's my friend?
I'm a Christmas person.
Yeah.
I like the Balearic island Ibiza. I like the Balearic island Ibiza. Oh, I love So the Karthagian goddess Tane will be said.
I suffer deep anxiety due to the terrible state of the world.
tattoo. I'm currently going through perimenopause or menopause. I need friends. Okay. Anyone have one? Two more to do. Anyone?
I doubt myself.
One more, one brave person.
Even if sometimes I feel lonely in these big institutions, I'm very grateful to be here.
I think that's a great one to end on. And I just want to say, sometimes I do this, for an hour or 2 hours when we really start to see how many things are not visible, how many similarities that we have that go undetected, how many differences that we can hold as a community, and that is practice. So being together is something practicing, and it's also a type of research, so I like to think about some of the things that I named are like, oh, no one possibly could do this. And it's also okay when I'm alone, this is also how things work, to know when the things move back and forth, when there's a large group of people, something's really common, or when there's solitude, that's natural and okay, and we all move through that in different positions and parts of our lives. And I just wanted to share what that movement sort of feels like, doing it together in this space. And you can reflect on that, or catch and release and let it go. I will hand it over to Rike. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry. I have a microphone. I have a beeping microphone. We're getting there? Okay. Thank you so much for this performance. Oops. Maybe this is better. Move it a bit away. Can you hear me in the meantime? Yeah? Okay. After moving around, the organ that we call voice is much more activated than we can do without a microphone, even, or with a low microphone. Thank you first of all for the invitation. Thank you, Filipa. Thank you, all of you. It was great to see that despite this and that discussion that I just imagine you all like to be here, that was really uplifting to see this. I think Filipa invited me to talk about the Berlin Artistic Research Program, das Berliner Programm Künstlerische Forschung. The Berlin Artistic Research Program, and yes, the term came up earlier today, whether it's research or Forschung. So in German, we use the term Forschung, in English, research. The Berlin Artistic Research Program was founded in 2020. It is an initiative, or it was an initiative by the Coalition of Independent Artists in Berlin, who approached the Senate to say, we want something in the field of artistic research. This led to a series of workshops, and then one of the co-initiators was, and still is, Catherine Busch. The Senate initiated this program together with the artists, together with everyone involved, in order to establish the first and I would say the only of its kind funding program within Germany. And this Senate is also currently, or has currently announced a 56% cut to our funding. After 4 years, or almost 5 years of work, we are turning 5 next year. So basically, we need loud and vocal voices that shout out to demand more artistic research. The artistic research program is open to artists based in Berlin. It's a 2-year program where we fund artists being active in the field of artistic research, artists to do artistic research. We have 3 pillars. So one is the monthly grant. The second one is project funds. You receive project funds as a fellow. And the third one is a public program and the idea of fellow meetings. We meet once a month with the fellows to also create a larger research community. What I've seen since the beginning is that 2 years, because often you have only 1 year in a funding program, but 2 years really create a stability and they create a space where change can actually happen, where there is space to reflect on your methods, to change certain production logics, to really rethink also what is your relationship to institutions, what kind of institutions are you looking for? So the various research programs or projects, enter the program at the same time, every 2 years in January. Also, they come in at very different stages. It means that we support and accompany many of the projects for far longer than 2 years or 24 months. Many of them materialize only years later, and we remain in conversation and we remain in close exchange with them. When I ask myself what constitutes artistic research, the first thing that actually comes to mind is that research does not take place in isolation. And we've heard this earlier today. It always involves relationships. Artistic research raises awareness of the communities involved in research, in the broadest sense, including human and more than human relationships. Research, we are already there, okay. Research produces encounters, agreements are made, conversations are held, information is handed over or jointly developed. The relationships form alliances and agreements, as well as conflicts and confrontations. These encounters are the first public moment with publics. They become attachments to the work, and they embed artistic research in larger conversations. In reclaiming knowledge are, and I'm paraphrasing Lucy here, the criteria currently used to evaluate art as a work of art still suitable for capturing the full potential and scope of art? Cotter subsequently refers to Katrin Busch and her 2011 text Wissensbildung in den Künsten, eine philosophische Träumerei, in which Busch pays attention to form and argues that the epistemologies of art open up precisely at the site of representation, while the recourse of form, and now we already have the image. According to Katrin Busch, it is here where a vision of a different culture of knowledge unfolds. The potential of artistic research lies in the boundary breaking, the poetics of knowledge as well as a critique of knowledge, in the endeavor to unearth the previously unsought, in the sought to display certainties and to unsettle established knowledge. You've heard these words often, but we also need to remind us again and again how this actually looks in practice. The author, curator, and writer, Tom Hohler, in turn finds the understanding of art, and that we see it here, as knowledge production extremely irritating and confusing, and in view of the fact that there is a widespread understanding of art as a practice that is explicitly characterized by critique of capitalist economies, which includes knowledge in a knowledge society. How does, so, artistic research deal with, and I quote, an implication or complication that is of art and its various practitioners into the economy of knowledge? It seems artistic research is intrinsically linked to a notion of transformation, which in turn evokes the question in whose interest, whose knowledge, and what knowledges. As author Linda Tweedy Smith, and some of you might be familiar with her writings, writes right at the beginning of her 1999 book, Decolonizing Methodologies, Research in Indigenous People, research is not an innocent concept. She states in the introduction, and I quote, research is not an innocent or distant academic exercise, but an activity that has something at stake and that occurs in a set of political and social conditions. Whose research is it? Who owns it? Whose interests does it serve? Who will benefit from it? Who has designed its questions and framed its scope? Who will carry it out? Who will write it up? Who will its results be? How will its results be disseminated? Is her spirit clear? Does, she writes, he, maybe do they have a good heart? What other baggage are they carrying? Are they useful to us? Can they fix our generator? Can they actually do anything? How good is our language? Linda points to one, our own implications, our entanglement in knowledge formations, in knowledge production, similar to what Tom articulates in his book. Further, she brings up not language. How good is our language? The language we use to speak about research and knowing, to address the not tangible or not always tangible. If research, and this is McCarty, who was one of the fellows in 2020, and and 2021. If research departs from convention, parameters unfixed, full of potential, if, like a generative ethics en route to revolution, inquiry develops under turbulence of geopolitical time and weather, if I embrace multitudinous intimacies in the world, posing questions across fields and mediums, with the ongoing need to comprehend the body I inhabit, and where I inhabit it, moving through borderless concepts of space, migration, my prototype, to understand along the way what just moments ago seemed outside my capacity. Then I can begin to say, I arrived for a moment at a transit point where I operate in the zone of artistic research. Here you see the names of the fellows from 2020 onwards. So we are currently in the third cycle. We are also inviting in a second fellowship, which is called Weltoffenes Berlin Fellowship, which sounds like, yeah, a bit of a joke at the moment. But through this, we also have supported people who were forced to leave their countries. So Badia, Evgenia Belarusets, Nicola Ridmi, and Vova Vorodnia. I would like to speak about two fellows and their practice before I end. The first one is Jessica Ikomane and her contribution to a record, a vinyl, titled Temporary Stored 2. It is a collection of audio pieces brought together by Knorr. He invited artists to respond to an exquisite auditory residue of the sound archive of the Royal Museum of Central Africa in Tervuren in Belgium. Following this invitation, Jessica Ikomane chose a recording of a kora in Mali. She's using some of the timelines highlighted by the museologist Kofi Agabo with the kora tuning and a form of sound synthesis that reproduced clapped strings. Kofi Agabo, a Ghanaian museologist and music theorist, defines timeline as a distinctly, and I quote, a distinctly shaped and often memorable rhythmic figure of modest duration. In her response to the recording of the kora in Mali, Jessica is trying to get inspired by the musical vocabulary and transposes it to computer music language. My reading of the piece, to which we will listen to in a minute, is also that she also reflects on the context in which the sample currently exists, the displacement, that it is part of a collection, that it is a collection item in a museum, and how to give to this sample, to this residue, to give voice to it, and to use her practice also as a moment of liberation. And maybe this is a good moment to listen to the piece. It's 3 minutes long. youth with the practice of Désirée. And lived for a long time in Brazil and is now based in Berlin. Many of his work center around death, decay, and the rotting material, as well as the idea of encounters with the more than human and the decentering of the human. He does it in many, many different ways. For example, he hardly gives any artist talks, so he's also quite insisting on breaking also this idea of linking immediately the artist's intention to the practice. What is interesting, or what interests me in this practice is actually like how smell, how insects are starting to inhabit and to almost take over the artwork or become part of the artwork. It questions obviously also when does an exhibition start and when does it end, because often in this case the preparation of the exhibition lasts longer than the exhibition itself. It takes a lot of time, and they've developed a particular questionnaire in order to understand whether the institution is actually able and capable to provide the caretaking for this work. And many of you, I know, are very familiar with this practice as well, what it means to bring art into an institution. And I would like to end here because it also speaks about the fact that luckily this program exists where artistic research is supported, but actually what is needed is also a change in the infrastructure in the institutions to also understand artistic research and to come in quite earlier in the process. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
I would really prefer to do this with a glass of wine, to be honest. So, yeah. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Rike. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Filipa. And Paul. And all of you. So, yeah, we're just going to get right into it. Let's start at the end. And it's the end of a long journey. A journey from Africa to the Caribbean. The end of a journey that's known as the Middle Passage. From the Gold Coast to the island of Haiti, a journey of once free people, stolen, shipped around the world, to be sold, to be told. A little bit of hoodoo is never wrong. So what was Legba? Daddy Legba. Talked about that later. So let's start at the end of that journey. Those once free people, they met other enslaved people on that tropical island. Born into oppression, born free, all of those people commingling on that island. Those survivors of the Middle Passage found their kin among the people on that island. Among them, Lieutenant Senate Belair. Those survivors of the Middle Passage, those once free people, those born into slavery, those born free, those women and those men, those people in between. With their heads and their minds and their bodies and their arms, they took up arms and they fought for their freedom. And they won. Well, they fought, they lost, they won, they fought. But they showed that it could be done. They say technology doesn't always work. They say they poisoned the wells. They say they used hoodoo to punish their oppressors. They say she refused to have her eyes covered when they assassinated her. Sanate Benet. That's the Haitian Revolution. And word traveled by ship, by sea, from Port-au-Prince to New Orleans. The first refugee crisis in the US was whites fleeing from liberated Haitian island. White people fleeing liberated black people. They fled to New Orleans. Word traveled. Black ladies taking up guns. Lieutenant Sanate Benet was a militant. She fought. She died. She fought and she won in spite of having lost her life. She won her fight. Word travels. By bodies, all kinds of bodies. Brown bodies, black bodies, white bodies. By word of mouth, by newspapers, by telegraph, and by table talk. Who heard which word, and what did they do, hearing what they heard? I will just explain this, right? You have white people fleeing Haiti, going to basically the American South, while slavery was still in existence, while many enslaved Africans were working in the homes of white people, hosting white refugees from Haiti. Guess who heard about black ladies taking up arms in Haiti? Black bodies in the American South. Who heard which word, and what did they do, knowing what they knew? Harriet Tubman, she heard. And what did she do, knowing what she knew? She also took up arms. So then you have those survivors of the Middle Passage, those people, those bodies, those born into freedom, those born into oppression, those born into slavery. They took up arms with their hands and their bodies and their arms and their minds. They got it in their head to take up arms and to fight for their freedom, right? And they fought and they won. They also lost. But the struggle was the struggle, and the struggle being done was the thing that was won, right? You might not win that everything that you want in that moment, but showing that the struggle is possible is the thing that is the win. I'm going to fast forward. My text is not. I'm going to go to Guria, Western Georgia. Are there any Western Georgians here? Kutaisi. It's 100 years later. A little bit, 100 years later after the revolution in Haiti. Got a bunch of Georgian folks. Girls, boys, men, women. Serfs, non-serfs, serfs of serfs. Owned people, not free people. Right? Sometimes free people with no money and a lot of debt. What did they do when they learned about black ladies in the US taking up guns? What did they do when they learned about black women in the Haitian Revolution taking up guns? What did they do knowing what they knew? I'm going to speak about some girls, some bank robbers in Georgia in 1907. They learned, they knew how to read, they knew how to write, they knew how to teach, and they knew how to print illegal newspapers. They also knew how to make dresses, they knew how to make petticoats, they knew how to use grenades. They knew where to carry them and how to carry them in their petticoats. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody can think that. Not everybody needs to take up a gun to take up arms. They knew. This is a funny bit of that story. Where did they get those grenades? You don't know, I do. I will share, and you will know, and then let's see what you do with what you knew. So, Alexander Bogdanov, he wrote a book called The Red Star. It's a science fiction classic. It's utopic. It's about a communist Mars, right? But if you know the codes you know that it's really about Guria. It's really about that peasant uprising in western Georgia where people lived in liberated, equality for about 5 years. It kicked out the Tsar, they kicked out the soldiers. They mobilized their forces to organize themselves. They kept the priests for baptisms and weddings, but they wouldn't pay taxes to the church anymore. And they kept the libraries open. They read their newspapers, they read their international newspapers, and they printed their illegal papers. They were smart, they were committed, they had excellent food. Very cheap, but delicious. It's important. They changed the world. Nobody's heard of Kutaisi. Okay, not many. Kutaisi, western Georgia, very far in the backwaters of the imperialist Tsarist world. That's where the revolution was born, 1907. 5 years later, 1912, 5 years later, 1917. That's just basic math. I know that because I learned that. Not everybody gets to learn that. But some people fight to be able to learn. Some people fight to be able to produce knowledge. I'm going to shift fast forward again. We've got Red Star, we've got science fiction. We've got, we've got CyberSyn. Everybody who knows CyberSyn and Red Star knows there's a connection. Did everybody know about Hortensia Bussi? She was married to a man named, what was his name again, Alistair? It's a joke, sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Salvador Allende. So, Hortensia Bussi herself worked in the Office of Statistics for the Chilean government as they were developing the concepts for the CyberSyn project. She herself had studied geography, history, and distribution. She was not unlike Bogdanov, an economist. She knew how the soil worked. She knew how the world worked. She knew how things needed to get from place A to place B. She's never mentioned in the history of CyberSyn, but if you know the codes, you know the roles, you know who knew which thing and how they knew what to do, she's kind of like that. So there you go. Donna Haraway knew about these things. These are like liberation movements, right? Donna Haraway knew. She wrote the Cyborg Manifesto in 1982, probably on an electric typewriter, not a computer. She imagined what was going to come. Things came. Venus Matrix, all the way in Australia, read that. What did they do, knowing what they knew? They wrote something else. They wrote the cyborg. Nope. They wrote correctly.
The Cyber Feminist Manifesto of the 21st century.
The what?
The Cyber Feminist Manifesto.
Of the 21st century? The Cyber Feminist Manifesto of the 21st century? And how does that go?
We are the future Kant. We are the modern Kant, positive anti-reason, unbounded, unleashed, unforgiving. We see art
with our Kant. We make art with our Kant. We believe in
Jocelyn's
madness,
madness, and poetry.
We are the virus of the new world disorder.
Rupturing the symbolic from within, saboteurs of Big Daddy mainframe.
Big Daddy mainframe.
The clitoris is a direct line to the matrix, VMS matrix, terminators of the moral code.
Mercenaries of slang go down on the altar of abjection. Probing the visceral temple, we speak in tongues, infiltrating, disrupting, disseminating, corrupting the discourse. We are the future Kant.
We are the future Kant.
We are the future Kant. Thank you. This is something, this is how word travels, right? Word is knowledge. So this is a kind of riff on a text from 2019, and I was really happy to sort of carry a bunch of sets of knowledge into it that have been gained through working with Filipa César, that I actually was super happy to include Joy Mariama Smith in my little ghosts that haunt me, all of the sort of bits and the bits and bodies that whisper in my ear when I think through things, but also like how do we carry knowledge together? And in this, like finally what became a text, I just have to sort of relate a funny thing that I only cited 2 texts, and one was Militant Education by Sonia Vaz-Juarez, and the other was Materialization by Filipa César. Everything else was footnoted, so it's a poem with footnotes. So you get footnotes about Cybersyn, you get footnotes about Red Star, you get footnotes about the Haitian Revolution or Santé Bel-Air, but they all went to Wikipedia. And the editor went completely crazy because he didn't realize that I wanted to deconstruct who knows what. And that's the sort of meaning of the text, is that we have to understand who is allowed to produce knowledge, right? We're all allowed to access knowledge. Education is something we've fought very hard for, and I think what Simon said earlier about which types of class bodies, race bodies can access academic in the first place, right? There's gender, there's race, there's class, there's all kinds of things that hinder many of us from entering the hallowed halls of academia, right? One thing is getting in, the other thing is getting access to, right? But who gets to produce knowledge? And I think this is something, and what kinds of knowledge count, right? And this is something that is core to what having access to artistic research is, or PhD, or the credibility that comes from being titled, having the stamp, having the official stamp of approval that you know. But not only that you know, but that you know enough to say, I don't know, and I would like to ask some questions. Because I think that's the point of the artistic research, but to have that be validated. And there I would end. I think I have much more to add, but that will have to wait for another time when there is one.
Okay, yeah, all right. This seems to work. Thank you very much to the other members of the panel. Thank you for the invitation, Filipa. My name is Paul Bailey and I'm very new here, so this has been an amazing opportunity to hear from people, to see people, and critically to think about this idea of research. What I prepared is a kind of a set of reflections on my kind of meanderings through it. Not that this is a guide, it's more like I suppose, a record. And I think particularly in the last panel there was a lot of ideas shared about this kind of modes of PhDing. And I'll kind of come around at the presentation reflecting on the PhD route that I'm kind of working through now. But this idea of, the art of research. I'm a designer, and I've been working in design education for some time, the whole way through my practice in various positions. And this question around what design is doing with research is there all the time. And I think this comes back to something that we heard earlier in the last one, the Q&A as well. It's like, where does it sit and where do we see research? So graphic design in particular is one of these practices that has been existing outside of the institution because it can, because it's kind of got these requirements where it can produce the knowledge and it can also use its skills to disseminate them. So Celine said earlier, I think, that this fact that where the research gets validated is where it's recognised. I'm quite interested in this question, understanding it with reference to this professorship that I've been fortunate to be offered and to undertake. I came here because of this in research, and maybe going back to what we just heard from Diana, I've come here not with answers, but I've got many questions about what this in research is. One of the questions I began thinking about as I prepared for the professorship was, what is happening with research and what's happening within the field of communication design, where we may need some research. Whilst I was thinking about the possible trajectory, I was, I suppose, thinking about where we are now, and I think the terms that I came to put together on that moment that I think still stand is this, that we kind of sit in a moment of disruptive disciplinary imaginaries. And we're talking about imaginaries of design. Ruptured because we're witnessing moments and movements of considerable change, like what we've learned from the pandemic, we're trying to instill the enlivened fights against social, racial, gender and climate injustices. And we're seeing existing dominant narratives and imaginaries under review, and in some cases actually being revised. Some of these shifts and ruptures can be seen in the drive to eliminate the blind spots that have been residing within and actually upholding the disciplinary imaginary of design. So projects such as these, like some of them you know very well, some of them are really born out of the school or house already, such as a glossary of disciplined design, edited by Anya Kaiser and Rebecca Stephanie, who is a professor here. We see the work of the Decolonizing Design Group, and we see the Immutable Designing Histories. All of these coming together, kind of woven around their positions in institutions, but often beyond. So I'm thinking about this beyondness. We also see practices like evening class, futurist, and fly-by-binary. All of these questioning normative terms, conditions, and models of visual communication with a view to reordering their intent and potential. So see, these contemporary revisions to the definitions of the discipline are particularly notable in the manner that they're finding form and articulation through visual communication practices that are practice-based, research-driven, self-organized, critically concerned, and socially situated, and in many cases operate outside of established academic or publishing institutions. So this is not unusual for the discourse of graphic design and visual communication, as those initiating the work, as I mentioned already, are equipped with the skills to mobilize communities and access publics. So I'm wondering about the possible PhD models that are porous and adaptable enough to hold such approaches, and I think again this was referred to in the previous panel. In an essay published in our forum, the historian Claire Bishop traces three key phases in what she terms the superabundance of research-based art, and offers a set of useful questions concerning research and the risks of disciplining a field through academic and institutional frameworks. Here we see two of the questions that I've drawn from her text, which I'm sure has probably been circulated and discussed by Mary already. So, thinking of those research, those questions, I'm also thinking about this question this composition posed by Martha Counts and Jeremy Rowan that speaks to Bishop's concerns. They believe design research is yet to define its discipline. So they say that design research is yet to define its discipline, or it could simply also choose to be undisciplined and not submit to a rigid framework or action. In this way, design research might not mean creating a new discipline or normative framework, but what is produced is rather a sensitivity, a set of ways of knowing, a set of ways of seeing, feeling, and potentially knowing. They conclude this article making a commitment to validate design practice as a way of generating knowledge in action, claiming that design is a way to become sensitive to matter, to the social, to the body, and to concepts. So I receive this proposition as an opportunity to reconsider how we research as much as what we research and what form of research insights might take. I'm wondering, some of the questions that are brewing is, what alternative forms of sensitivity could an undisciplined and indisciplined approach offer to research-oriented practices of visual communication? What might be learned from a revision and diversification of the methods and formats established in design research and artistic practices? So I'll share a small example and a couple of more moments that I've kind of stumbled through in my trajectory, and then I'll wrap up. So yeah, along with Martha and Jaron and fellow members of a research centre that was hosted at LCC called Super System Studio, I co-hosted the Radical Imaginary during the Design Research Society Symposium. What that was two discussions which took place at the same time. One discussing the central concept of a radical imaginative turn in design research, and the other exploring how embodiment may affect and alter approaches to design research. So both conversations were hosted in the snug bar of two neighbouring pubs in Limerick, in Ireland, where the design research symposium took place. You have to imagine like a crossroads, and on the corner of both crossroads is the two pubs. So people have the opportunity to come in to either. And the other thing that's important to understand with regards to the space, you can see me here, sitting in a very confined space. The snug was designed as a space in public houses, in pubs and bars, where women could come into the bar and not be seen by the men who were there. So they would come to the bar and have a little window that they could request beverages through, and that would be the idea, that they come in and they wouldn't be seen. And so we thought it was important to kind of step into these places and actually kind of access that as a site of knowledge for thinking towards other forms of representation and thought. So with the conversations, we produced a radio, a very local radio that would work between these crossroads. You could come into the snug and talk and converse as part of the conversations, but you could also tune in online and make your own mix. So I'm going to try to play you a very short clip. So let's see if it works.
I'm very pleased to be here and have you all here.
So you can see you hold it in the center, you say one.
In this space, we hope it allows us to go out of conventional spaces in which we discuss design, we discuss research, we discuss imagination, and we go to another place. And that will help, hopefully, to bring this conversation to life. Just remember you, we're recording and streaming this, but you don't have to speak.
And quite some years ago now, we met up, and it was almost over a beer, sort of talked a little bit about our frustrations around design research, which led to a seminar that was
possible. And just a little bit of background. I come from Bal,
Anyway, if you're into that, you can check it out another time. What was interesting about the type of conversations that came in, so the conversation I was within, it was talking about embodiment in design research. And so I invited a person called, he's a Shanachie in Ireland, his name Eddie Lenihan. I invited him in particular because Eddie is a Shanachie's role in Ireland, in Irish culture, is to kind of go and gather the stories, to be the person that goes around and captures them, the folklore, the stories that may be lost otherwise. And one of the strands of story that Eddie gathers is the story of the fairies, and the fairies' role within Irish folklore, and what they've done, and what their kind of power is, and what that means for the way that we navigate the Irish landscape and cultural society today. Eddie came to just talk about that, just speaking on what Diana has just shared, this idea of who holds the knowledge and who carries it across, and what type of research does that constitute. Eddie was invited to speak about that, but then veered into a very passionate reflection on the fact that he's really fucked off with the way that institutions have developed and tried to recognise this type of knowledge in various ways. We can talk about that again as well. Very quickly, a few other points. A key part of my practice has been to design opportunities within my pedagogic approach that explore the contingent sides of design, education, research and practice. For 8 years I directed the MA Graphic Media Design course at the London College of Communication, the website you're seeing here. It's a course I designed really with my colleagues, and within that we were thinking about how we might reorient graphic design and employ it as a critical tool to investigate the complexities of contemporary society. The This called for a repositioning of design and therefore reimagining of how we might teach and research it. So, as we were developing the course design, we questioned the place of research at postgraduate level for a subject and practice of graphic design. But we began experimenting with various modes and forms of research. For instance, writing, which might traditionally appear in forms like dissertations, reports, and theses. We wondered about writing's other capacities, perhaps as a visual research tool, to seek out and locate inquiries, for instance. We wondered about moving this research beyond the institution towards new publics. These explorations spawned a language forms of volume, which you're seeing on screen here. A reader of graphic design research that is authored, edited, designed by the course participants directly. It really set out to investigate strategies to make graphic design research public, to make it voluble, so it has volume, and to make it resonate with multiple publics across LCC and beyond. It has since become a space devised to sit outside of the core curriculum and to transgress institutional frame. It's supported by an advisory team of guest editors and designers, and it takes form in an annual publication, print and online, with a curated symposium hosted at LCC. Within this, the contributors approach writing in the expanded sense, featuring critical text, visual essays, poems, interviews, articles, biographies, scripts, instructions, indexes, and more. In a collaboratively authored text reflecting on the course design, entitled A Refractive Review, published in One and Many Mirrors, Perspectives on Graphic Design Education, one of the founding student editors, Gabriella, reminded us of the editorial model devised for the publication, to hold space for research in its various states of becoming. Refer back to Bishop's query about ring-fencing space for more immediate research. The approach outlined here offers a conscious push against the slow, polished, peer-reviewed model typified in traditional research publishing formats. Yeah, and just to kind of wrap up, kind of bringing you towards where I want my very current position with research. Throughout my practice, I've been experimenting with formats and contexts to stage and publish research. Website-specific installations, short-term multi-film exhibitions, experimentation with models of narration, collective inquiries with others, and all sorts. But this research developed out of an interest in the shifting behaviours of reading and watching, and pays a particular interest to the destabilised states of these activities due to the emergence of new information environments, realities, and platforms. Within this work, I'm curious about the tentative nature of information, about its own and destabilised states. I'm drawn to the fact that these ideas are liable and likely to shift and move. And I typically try to make frameworks or apparatus that supports communication visible. There's a clear sense of unresolved, of a composition that will not remain. I see these as attempts as exercises to think aloud in public, to figure it out as I go. These attempts steer me towards the visual essay translating to try in English from French. So the research developed into this PhD inquiry. And I think this maybe speaks a bit more to what we heard about the panel before, but I've been fortunate to receive funding from the Cass School of Art in Ghent to pursue a 6-year practice-based PhD, which deals with this guiding question. The thing that's interesting with the PhD is that, and I've only learned this recently myself, I'm 3 years in and 3 to go, that they don't address it as a practice-based PhD there. They address it as a PhD in the arts. What this means is that what you're required to do is engage in a 6-year research project leading up to the public presentation of work in a public doctoral defence towards the degree of Doctor in the Arts. What's also interesting is, like, speaking of formats and how research and knowledge is validated and reviewed. There's no word count and there's no form requirement. The only things that are required is that the research project must come from the artistic practice of the applicant, of the person doing the research, with questions, methodologies, strategies, and output forms to be determined by the work that informs it and feeding back to it. The work eventually submitted to the doctoral jury will combine artistic work and a substantial discursive document. So these two elements are what are required to constitute the PhD qualification, and what's interesting is they're negotiated the whole way through. You are supported by a doctoral guidance committee, which is composed of 2 supervisors and 2 experts that you bring into your team. So yeah, I'm just going to share it as an example, and maybe not the definite model, but the last point being that it's what's important here is that it is funded and it is supported for that full 6 years. And what's interesting is that it calls for a blend of teaching and research, with research being the majority of your time, I think 70%, and teaching at 30%. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Just wanted to, I had the idea to go into the art of my own closet to pick up something that actually I did 10 years ago, more exactly actually 10 years ago, as a morning, let's say a morning essay. And I was inspired by the button that I was given when I came here, and also the sun or the moon, and also this building as a former weapon factory. Selection of non-aligned records, flipping through palm tree leaves, grazing vikinology pastures, looking through tropical mismatches and tepid encounters. Few palmitic captions. Can you take the cursor of In December 2014, I was working with Kenyan filmmakers on the West African coast. When we were done, I decided to take a break. I spent one day on a tropical island. I thought I was taking a break, and still I was at work. I went to a tropical island and ended up in a palm oil plant. On a tropical island, the sun can turn down and I make shade for the eyes. I seek for a palm tree shadow. I look down to the ruins of the German palm oil factory. Can you take the cursor of the... No? So. Palm, tropical tree. The name derives from the shape of its leaves, like stretched fingers of the air. In the Syrian religion, the palm was a sacred tree connecting heaven represented by the crown, and earth, the base of the trunk. It was adopted into Christian cosmology to represent the victory of the spirit over the flesh. I didn't essay this. The word palm traveled up to Northern Europe, where the tree does not grow. Palmatória means in Portuguese a flat piece of wood for punishing children. To palm is to impose something on something. To extend from palm off means to impose something fraudulently on someone. In Portuguese, palmar means to steal, or to make something vanish with a sleight of hand. Greece is in the palm and the palm oil industry. The port village Bubak is built on the ruins of a German palm oil factory, the most proliferous oil palm of West Africa, the Elasis guineensis, grows on this island endemic. The German factory was established between the two world wars and was active until the beginning of the 1980s. On a blog titled Traces of Germans in Bubak, family members of former factory owners share their nostalgic topical memories. Quote, the manager of my grandfather was there for about 1924 to 1928. The result, it was a palm oil factory with associated plantations and a paved road made of seashells connecting the other end of the island.
Abbiamo terra di mare e comunità passa di volta e vi impara e cade anche il raga per parte di suo ballati e tanti di tempi bei e per il teneva chi siete da chi tempo a fare il boom di guerra mondiale perché vogliamo di ora tenne 74 anni. Era un meccanico, l'utilizzo di carica di tempo perché come si vede mai in anticipo quasi di sé era uomo di carriera di sete che è stessa una carriera di sete io insegno i compagni di mangere ma lui quasi non mi viene gli seguenti si viene di un dovuto presa una parte di Karlsruhe con fondo quarto di Troia.
Che tempo guerra di Hitler, quella che tale che va fare bomba di avione, va a fare bomba di avione. Realmente sono le scelte della parte, che sono neghe che si deve possibilità tanti di
factor all over the village, like in an archaeological site. The findings pop out of the ground, half buried, half exhumed. There are useful findings, structuring buildings and pavements, ornamenting backyards and terraces, making pitfalls, serving as candlesticks or plank poles. Palm oil is one of the most lucrative products of tropical regions. Palmitic acid, coined by Edmond Fermi in 1840, is obtained by the saponification of palm oil, rendered from the species Ileus guinensis. It is used to produce cosmetics, fuel, and release agents. In humans, palmitic acid comprises of 30% of the human fat and is a major lipid component of breast milk and is used in the treatment of schizophrenia. Palmitic acid is naphthenic acid, were combined during the World War II to produce napalm. The word napalm derives from the words naphthenic and palmitic. Surname palm, given name na. No annual rings form inside a palm tree trunk. Palms don't count time in years, resisting historicism. No log in of the tree log, no timer on the timer. Palms forget to record and remember to forget. The word napalm is no longer in use for today's bombs. But the palm extracted from the word is still a component of the bombs, dump incinerate bombs, produced, sold, hoisted into the sky, and dropped onto Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan today, Palestinian territories, Ukraine, etc. The palm tree transmitted were planted on the new Federal Intelligence building in Berlin, there where the trees don't grow. Potted palm, tepid palm, palm of fertility, peace and triumph, palm court, palm dog, palmistry, exotic palm and palmitic tourism, jeu de paume, palm ornament, and subordination ointment. Olive palm may be condemned for condemning the palm. An archaeologist of Rabat sweeps the seashell ground with a palm leaf broom. to unearth the tombstone of a former factory owner. If you are a tourist on a tropical island, the sun can blind. First you close your eyes to the sun, then you close your eyes to the greens, then you close your eyes to the working conditions, then you close your eyes to the entire factory. Wie man das wenden kann. How to turn it around. I am a tourist on a West African island. My journey partners could use some palm tree shade. That is why I became a palm oil producer. On a West African island, in Berlin, I planted a palm tree transmitter, but no matter what I do, it always casts a palm oil bomb shadow. I am a worker and work in a palm oil factory on my West African island. I believe, though, that the factory was producing palm oil bombs for Portugal and Germany. But we really could use some proof. That's why every day I took home small portions of palm oil. I tried to put a palm oil bomb together, but no matter what I did, it always turned into a palm tree holiday shadow. I'm a pilgrim and arriving at a tepid palm oil factory. In Berlin, I'm an asylum seeker in a European crime factory. No matter where I am, I get caught on a shadow-producing system. I'm a filmmaker shooting images on a West African island. The tourists tell about palm tree holiday shades. The African workers tell about palm oil bomb shadows. I shoot a palm tree holiday site, but no matter what I do, I only get palm oil bomb images. The palm tree shade can become a useful African transmitter. The palm oil bomb can become a useful European shadow. What shadow a palm tree casts depends on weapon producers, tourists, refugees, African workers, and filmmakers. Thank you. Maybe not now yet. So I'd like now to change the mode to welcome all of you to this area. Diana, Joy, Paul, Rike. Thank you so much. Difficult to change the mode so fast. first I wanted to thank actually Diana, who was helping me in the script, and also the Joaquin, João, and Daisato who were speaking in this essay. And of course, I mean, I haven't read it since 10 years. It's really interesting. It was really came out of my impulses of the atmosphere yesterday to bring this up. And because there was some insecurity about how the panel was going to run. But I wanted to jump into something because I mean, Joy is here also for something else in Karlsruhe. Next week they are going to work with us in a workshop called Reckon, Repair and Resource. And I mean, I think this is interesting to bring here because the idea of bringing Joy to Karlsruhe came out of a discussion with students. Some of them are here, so like I'm seeing some of the students that were in a conversation around 1 year ago about some issues in the school. We wanted to think together how to design and maybe write together a code of, like update the kind of idea of code of conduct. I don't like very much the words, and in that kind of research, what are the agreements in the school and how do we deal with each other? And there was some kind of crisis. We were like sitting together with a group of students, Diane and many colleagues as well, and we made a kind of a research and brought together different codes of conduct that were made by other schools, and we were reading some of them, and then we came to one that Joy wrote together with her colleagues at Dutch Art Institute, and everybody in the room was so had so much fun and were so interested in the language and how, you know, like all that process. And I thought it was very interesting how a student of an institution engages into shaping the school, shaping this kind of, what kind of space we want to have, and make a research around that, and get really involved. And that was so inspiring also for the students that, you know, like this is, how can we create a space that like everybody negotiates how it should work. And this is just to bring you up again, because the wonderful experience we had to start this panel was already a little bit like making this awareness process. So I just wanted to bring you back into the conversation. Thank you, Joy, for being here. And also like inviting anyone that wants to join, because we still have space in the workshop from Monday on.
Hello. Thanks again, and thanks, lovely co-panel folk. I just want to say, in terms of, like, not a code of conduct, but referencing like how we learn together under the lens of research, which is what we're talking about, right? For me, I started, so the document that Filipa was referring to at the Dutch Art Institute is a CARE document, and also at the Academy of Theatre and Dance, there's another CARE document called How We Learn Together. And they're all living documents. They all have input from anyone that wants to put input in, and they're all collaboratively written. I started at the Dutch Art Institute basically centering what I needed in order to feel safe learning. As an immigrant, as a trans non-binary person, as a poor person, as a person living with a disability, my learning environment wasn't actually supportive. It turned out that there were other people that didn't feel supported by their learning environment. We got together and started writing from all different places, all different continents, and we just sat down and thought about what we needed. What would it look like to have a supportive learning environment? And we began this research, and we proposed to our artistic director if we write something, what will happen to it, and it needs to live, it needs to be edited by each generation of students that come in. And that was over 10 years ago, and that document still exists. And then in another context, I started as a staff member at the Academy of Theater and Dance, which is performance-based. And the same thing, I was asked by students to sort of figure out how we can learn together. But since we already had a document, we took the base document from the Dutch Art Institute, and each student gave their input, and we developed together from the students' experience what was missing. So things around accessibility, neurodivergence, gender, non-EU. These issues are coming from, and we're making space to hold them, and collaboratively writing. So what we do now is the students bring in their issues, and then we have a core team of people that have to edit and finesse the language, which is a beautiful way to collaborate. And I think about what you were saying, practice-based, or not calling it practice-based, like what are we actually doing? How do we understand where we overlap and where we intersect, and how to articulate what our needs are when we're doing research. So this is where I'm starting from, and I'm happy to short dip into the symposium and then stay a little bit longer and engage with anyone that's interested in that.
I don't know who would like to. I mean, we agree that I don't moderate alone. So.
Maybe one thing I could maybe, but thank you for that. It sounds like an amazing workshop, and the work that you've been doing is fantastic. So thank you very much for that, first of all. The model that you use with this idea of the live document, I think is a really interesting thing to carry across into this idea of what are the terms of validation or qualification for something like a PhD, which I guess we might come around to speak about a bit, but I think that's why I wanted to share that example of the PhD in the arts with this discursive and the artistic, because it is a negotiated thing. There's like 6 people, and then there will be a defense, which I find a strange word, but I think that's the aspect of this that I think is actually working, you know, and like, you know, I'm 3 years in, and it's morphing all the time, and initially, I think, you know, with the anxieties that you might have about stepping into some of that space, and that you should know ahead all of that, but you can suddenly see that the agency that you begin to have, and actually that it does become your living practice, rather than this practice that has to be kind of read by some parameters that are set up by an institution otherwise. So yeah, this is a question of like liveness and ongoingness, and it being situated within the practitioner's research, I think is an important one for us to continue thinking on.
I just wanted to jump from here to Diane also, because also within this, what research can actually change, and actually from the urgencies, from the problems that are there, research can really create awareness, but also like create formats and actually open doors, and actually wanted to ask them to address a bit faces, because it was exactly that. It was about creating a space that was not there for feminist positionings, and how, maybe this was a long time ago, but it's so important it's still active, and it's so useful.
And this is funny because I would so I was thinking of like transmission, and like basically there's one, like I'm getting to what you're asking, okay? So I will weave my way back. So something that there's, one thing is like how, like what we do, right? How we do it, what it is, and then who do we share it with, how does it get shared? And that's partly what I think was raised earlier, like how is the knowledge validated? So what are the knowledges being produced, and then how are they being shared? And then what are the blind spots? So for example, in what year, what decade is this, which century? So for time travelers like me, sometimes we flip. So I think like about 30-something years ago, when I was going to conferences around new media like Ars Electronica, Next 5 Minutes, etc., etc. Young, ambitious, didn't need sleep. What I noticed, and with like several colleagues, like friends, allies, etc., those that I was dancing into the late nights with, we found out there weren't very many women being present. And there were always some, right? There was Videonada in Berlin, there were all kinds of things. There was always some, probably only one at least. And then we were collecting information about women and sharing it amongst ourselves. And you know, it was like the early 90s, you know, not everyone had email. But like, hey, did you hear about this project? You heard about this? And this was sort of the great days of the internet mailing list. So there was NetTime and some others, and we started Faces as a simple way to simply share with many, right, all at once. So instead of me just sharing something with Filipa or with Hanin, I would be able to share with Filipa, Hanin, Joy, and Rike. Sorry, not you. So, but one thing is that the point was that we thought, okay, at least amongst women, or like women, even non-binary people, we wanted to create a space where that information could be shared, so at least we would know what the others were doing. Very much East West Europe focused, like, which was important in the 90s. A lot of this work was East West Europe, but until today it remains. And I think it's a very simple, basic thing, not super interesting, I must say, but it remains important. And, you know, there's gatherings, and it's still there. And every time we consider closing it, people say, please don't, and yeah, it remains vital. But one thing I wanted to say is that because that also relates to the transmission, and at the sort of the last minute, I switched from talking about Reboot to go into this text. So, which is Reboot is an artist-run radio, and it's so much driven by this kind of interdisciplinarity. It has something like so many different aspects informing it, and it's like so we did so much outreach, which is also research, right? And I would say active research, so much reaching out to different people to find out what they would need. You know, at least in those days, also having money to do stuff, but at least could build a model that is sustainable today because it never relied on public funding. And so that's something very important that still remains. And I would say, like I borrowed from you, Filipa, that borrowed from Filipa Cabral, our people are our mountain. So with Reboot, we also say this internally, right? And I would say until today, it remains also a very important licensed FM radio in Berlin, artist run. It is a feminist project. It is a project of people of color, but we never say any of this. We never claim to be anti-racist or feminist or anti-Semitic or anything. We're pro-Palestinian. We are simply, we do our politics, and we allow for a lot of things to happen in relation to each other. And I have to say that's very important, but that's going back to the transmission. And it's also like understanding the bodies of transmission, the affinities, and like the discourses around, and creating a space. And they're like, you know, more. I mean, also like working with refugees that we met through working on film with Filipa, and that then having a license, a legal license, having an association that is legally founded, which is possibly the first in Germany where there's a license granted to a body where there are not German bodies. The whole board is Italian, American, and not Ghanaian. Ghanaian, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uganda and
yeah. So that's and like legalized refugee bodies are like holding like the majority of positions on the board. Where I think that's something very important in the eyes of the city government, right? So like, that's a legal thing, that's something we've got a legal license to do this, and we have a legal body where we share resources. Anyhow.
Maybe it would be nice to pass on to Rike, because I mean, one of the things that your project, I mean, the program, the Berlin program of artist research brought was this idea of, because often when we get money to produce things from the state with grants, it was always like, you get the money for the piece, but then you don't have money to research, you don't have money to pay your rent. It's always like, it was always this kind of situation. And I think this idea of like giving artists 2 years, kind of like, we pay you life and you research, and you don't have to give us a product at the end. Like, not necessarily, but you know, it's about like, it's almost like paying time to artists to research. You want to
jump in? I love to think of it
research often in combination with curatorial research. And it's interesting that this term hasn't really come up here today, because it's actually also something that I know from my other work and other practice, that there are many overlaps. I hardly know curatorists who are given years to actually research. Maybe Documenta was one of the last institutions or formats really providing this possibility to spend 5 years or 4 years thinking about the practice, thinking about formats, becoming acquainted with a situation, with a location, and with different artistic works. What I said before is that the artistic projects, they come in really at various different stages. So some really use the 2 years in order to finish a work. Others, as I also mentioned, come in and benefit from the 2 years in order to radically rethink their working methods. Because for once, there is the possibility to maybe step out of certain logics that you were pushed in, or that you just you're invited, and you, curators as well as artists, we are also then always asked to become not a signature figure, but we also often point them under certain terms or questions, ideas, and thematics. So I think these are moments, but it shows that these works, like yours, like your practices, they need this time, and they need actually these years. And I don't know, how long we often wander around with an idea until we find the possibility to have it materialized. And I think also we think of climate, we think about production logics. It was brought up earlier here today, one PhD after the other, one book after the other, all the trees. I think that with artistic research, we can intervene into many more infrastructures and build or twist and transform infrastructures differently. And I think that is also something that interests me. And to finish this, curatorial research, for example, helps me really to rethink the format of the exhibition, which is as much often a conventional or thought about in a very conventional way as much as artisans and so on.
Then you want to take over, or shall we open up to the questions?
Hello? I think there we go. Because I would like to sort of take your eyes and look at the students and say, because one thing is that, like academia, this study time is for the students time a valuable time for research. This process of learning and gaining and just gathering up stuff. And there I would like to use your eyes to look at the students and say, see, this is what you can do while you're here studying. And that this is then, like, what is it? Like an artist, you cease to have the time, or you go into this production machine. Or you're on the edges of it. Right? And I think that's something that is very, very valuable. And that's why I think it's very important to look for this space to have a house for artistic research. So that they came as children. Take your precious time to learn.
I just wanted to also add, sort of touching on many things, because that's how my mind works. If we're thinking about knowledge production, who has access, who has the right to share knowledge, curation, artistic research, discursive, practice-based, all those things. And a thing that I also wanted to put in the room in terms knowledge production, or the large umbrella of research, is naming that there are different types of knowledge production. There's embodied knowledge, there's emotional intelligence, there's somatic intelligence, there's visceral intelligence, and what do our institutions start to look like when we hold all those things together? Because before institutions existed, human beings were exchanging knowledge in many different ways, and some things occurred, not just transatlantic slave trade or capitalism, but some things occurred that moved us away from a very diverse way of cultivating and sharing knowledge. And what I am curious about, especially in being in cahoots with these folks that I'm with now, is how we pivot and invite those ways of sharing back in. Because when I'm in the district teaching, for example, and it's a multilingual setting, and I encourage people to not homogenize into English or whatever the language of the institution is, German, etc. If we keep it multilingual and we translate for each other, we deepen and richen all of our knowledge. If we do that all the time, then what does research and education start to look like? Very exciting and very interesting. So I just wanted to bring that in.
So I'd like to invite you all to share, comment.
I'm going to read another manifesto. I tried to ask yesterday as well, but it's because that this class that I've been telling you, but we talk a lot in my seminar, because in another bubble, there is this idea of the legacy media, legacy institutions, and that we feel that we're anyways moving away right now in a platform space of dark forest. So I just wanted to, I don't know if you have sparks of it, the end of the institution, and in a common sense, not power will always exist. But yeah. Because you were saying that the institution.
Is that for me?
It's for anybody.
Great question. And a big one. I don't know if I can signal whether it's the end of the institution, but I think what I was trying to offer in the points I shared with this, looking at the Bishop text, what are the implications of institutionalizing knowledge? What are the implications of taming the things that you've been mentioning, these models, ideas that get flattened or don't get recognized or get overlooked or called for other forms of review that there just isn't capacity for. I think that type of institution maybe does need to end. And I think we need to move into thinking about hosting space for, that was what I really liked in your invitation to the panel, is how can this space with this opportunity host other forms of knowledge production and look at supporting that and recognizing that. So I think it's not an answer to your thing, but I think it is the moment to pivot and to kind of listen and include or evolve, for sure.
Maybe I can would like to add a tiny thought. I'm currently also working with Sarah Pierce. Sarah is an American artist who's based since 2000 in Ireland, and we're working on the show Scene of the Myth, which is currently touring. Anyway, Sarah would always think of instituting in combination with protest, and I think that is something that I learned from her and took from her, and that became very important to me.
I would always think of institutions as something that is not a fixed entity. And we need all our voices and all our strengths to protect it, but also to protest it on a daily basis. Thanks for your question.
Yeah, I just wanted to share something that I don't know if I should share it here in public, but there's always this, related to what you just spoke, is what kind of level of interface, between this institution and also the work that some of us do also on another level, and like activism, non-institutional, where actually things are being tested that are, I think, much more visionary somehow, and where, but of course they are in a level of, maybe we could bring up, Fred Moten and Stefan Harney's idea of the undercommons as, what kind of levels the university can have in terms of what is legal or what is happening and completely presented and what is actually happening more underground, things that are not necessarily where the things are being tested, actually, where the limits are being tested, and then and where one can because we are under siege. We are under kind of the systems that are extremely violent, oppressive, whatever where we want to put it, but that's the state of that's the condition. That's the condition also where these institutions are placed on, and they are serving, all these governances. So and I think the academy can have these spaces, these different levels, some more opaque, and I think I don't know, maybe it's not something. Maybe it's better to talk about these things in the seminar room than in a public space. But just wanted to bring here this.
Could I add on that? Because I'm sure this is not the right place, but then of course I must. Because this is something in a weird way, I really appreciate the structure here. Nevertheless, it's a low lane hierarchy, right? And I think that's something that's funny, how is our thinking, no matter how much we want to detach ourselves from different kinds of structures. And I have to say there's a difference, the institutions, and that what are they in the service of, right? And that there's one thing as a person working in an institution, what are they in service of? Because it's not the problem, it's not the institution. The problem is the institutionalization of the institution, right? And so you can have an institution that's not institutionalized. And then you have all of these structural levels. So it's basically I'm working here for the German government. I work at HFG, but I work for the German government. And my job is to teach young students. And I don't work for the German students, or the students, right? This is the thing, and so my job is to teach students. And this is something, and then it's the job of the Senate and this, the rector and all these things to maintain this body in order for us to teach students, right? Okay. We still have to answer to the ministry that answer to the voters, right? So we have all of these layers of different types of institutions, and in the end, who's in service to who for what? And keeping an institution free from being the thing that we're in the service of is very important. And understanding what are the relations, who are we in relation to the institution, and what is the institution in relation to all the other structures that are controlling how we use these institutions. But whether it's the museums, this kind of research as the most trusted museums. Yeah. The museums. Yeah. But all of these things, what do we what are the relationships? What are the and I'm gonna go to the agencies, what are the abilities of people to operate? And then what are the challenges that we have to not be tamed? Because that's the other one that keeps coming up that I think it's really dangerous that everything has to be then tamed and conflated into something that fits something that people understand as what they already know is how we know things.
Maybe a last remark, because I'm receiving signs that we have to close, because there are people that have to take their trains, some of you actually.
sure. Yeah, thank you. I think the thing I brought back to it was maybe going back to this question about institution again. It's like what institutes the knowledge, and I'm reminded of something that Eddie Linehan said. So the Shanachie that I introduced in that conversation, the guy who goes around gathering the stories and the stories of the fairies in Ireland and folklore. There was an incident where the fairies are known for the fairy tree, and the fairy tree can be recognised by sitting in the middle of an open field, so you can kind of see. And any farmer, anybody who owns the fields, would never really, under like Eddie's guidance and anybody's knowledge of the fairy tree, don't disturb the tree. That said, beside Limerick, there is an airport called Shannon Airport, and they wanted to build a motorway that would make it quicker to travel from Shannon Airport to Limerick City. And the plans for this motorway would run through a very important fairy tree. And so Eddie announced this, and he spoke to the local press, and we started to get some knowledge circulating about what this might mean if this tree is disturbed. And it became a national campaign. And then basically what happened is they changed the route of this road, so this road doesn't break the tree, it doesn't knock the tree, it actually goes around it. So if you ever make this route from Limerick to Shannon, you'll go around the fairy tree. I'm just sharing that as an example of how knowledge about the fairies that might be dismissed comes into this kind of thing around, actually, well, what does it mean if you actually might do it? This kind of ruling, therefore, it institutes that there is a form of knowledge that it can't be overlooked or disrespected. So I think it's a really interesting example of how knowledge becomes instituted, even though for a long time it can be shaky, unstable, questionable in some way.
We really have to close because there's going to be some remarks afterward. Some questions can be posed also, so it's not the last chance. I just wanted to thank you all, and also thanking the, Alexander and Sebastian, all the technicians that are amazing. And also, but I have to do it also. And there's chances also to work with Joy next week, so please come.
What time?
Just send me an email. If you want to sign up, just send me an email. It's very easy. 10 o'clock on Monday, 103, if you want to sign up. Yes. 103 is there. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Before we run away, there is still an invitation to come over there and to have some more exchange, if you have some more time, with drinks and some snacks. But we need some time also for really some more deeply thank yous, because a lot of people contributed to this. And I think Alistair wanted to start. And but just one sentence. I don't want to repeat anything what was said already, but I think all this what was said and what was brought up, it's definitely a call for us to make something more possible, to enable more things, to enable a program. And as this symposium was prepared by many, it's also the call for those many to make something more possible. And I'm very looking forward to this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Constanza. And also, it gave me great hope, I think, what might be possible and achievable in simple terms by just bringing people in the room together and seeing what happens. And this, the word emergence came out yesterday from the world of computer science research, which is where that's the stuff they don't expect that comes out of the connections that get made. So I'm going to hold that in my head whilst we digest other things. But I'm going to start with thank yous. You know, we have to keep to time. I have a list written down, which is necessary. So I think we now need to thank the Fördige Gesellschaft for supporting this event and helping to finance it and produce it. And I have to thank all our speakers that we've heard from. They've been fantastic over the last few days. So Mariama, Paul Bailey, Bernadette Bosson-Visson, McCarty, Tina Lorenz, Armin Link, Monica Narula, Garrett Sharma, Joy, Mariama Smith, and Marie Fass, and Mona Maya, and Rike Frank. Thank you all so much, along with our organisational team who also spoke of Matthias Brunn, Filipa César, Celine Ponderelli, Suzanne Freeman, Fussel Directen, Thomas Fröhlich, Simon Sheikh, and Nina Schocker, and a very special Lily Rosa and Désirée, Düdder-Lechner, who put this event together behind the scenes. So thank you all to everybody.
That's not even all. We have more guests, also from the colleagues from the ZKM. Felix Mittelberger was respondent too. And I really want to deeply thank our graphic team, Sophie Eckert, Michael Rothfuss, Felix Köder. The conference architecture is very much from Philip Kern, who's sitting over there. But it's also the supervision work by Vera Gärtner, who's sitting over there. Thank you to the press and communication team, Simone Heinrich, Anna Volkland, Marlene Ernst from the ZKM communication and the ZKM communication team, Katrin Lutz and her colleague Bettina Heise. Thank you very much.
And as Filipa mentioned before, I want to say a huge thank you to the technical teams who made this event happen so smoothly and eloquently. So that's Teresa Braunschweig, Sebastian Schäfer, Alexander Nupik, Ingo Mangold, Philip Lauer, and the Alan Hueys, the student volunteers who helped put everything together. Thank you for all your time and effort. Thank you to Dominika Theiser, Nicolette Wolf, and Svenja Liebig, and our kind of documenters in film and video, etc. That's Ying Yang, Sunmi Kim, Min-hee Oh, Jörg Stegman, Nathalie Tauscher, Social and Dirty in Asta. And a big thank you also to my colleague Helga Huskamp for helping get some money and resources into this event. So, but thank you mostly to all of you for participating and being so attentive and switched on. And we look forward to seeing what emerges from this first phase.
Thank you, and we are now invited to have some drinks and snacks and exchange more. Thank you very much.